Now, what is a succession certificate? There's a difference between probate, letters of administration, succession certificate. When a person has not left any immovable property behind, we have seen that whenever there's immovable property which is left behind, a probate or letters of administration may become necessary. Suppose a person has no immovable property. Suppose he's gifted away all his immovable property during his lifetime, but he has certain bank accounts, he has certain shares in a company, he has securities. Now, in alternate, or you can of course apply for a letter of administration without a will, even in that case. But if it is only for movable assets such as bank accounts, money in the bank accounts, government securities, company shares, securities, etc., PPF, you can probably apply for a succession certificate. Now, what really is a succession certificate? A succession certificate is a document which is again issued by the High Court, which essentially discharges a debt that is payable to a person. Now, when a bank is really a debtor and a depositor is a creditor. If the bank has to give the money on the death of a person, the bank needs to be told that I am the successor of the deceased, and when you are paying me that money, you're discharging your debt legally. This succession certificate declares that position, that you are the successor of the deceased, and that the bank paying you the money in the absence of a will or in the absence of a probate or letters of administration, the bank is duly complying with its obligation by giving the money to somebody who's legally entitled to it. So this document is sometimes required by companies, by banks, in order to show that a person is making payment to a person who's entitled to it legally. This is the whole purpose of applying for a succession certificate. If a deceased does not have immovable property and wants and has not left a will behind, you can apply as a beneficiary of that movable property by way of a succession certificate. We've seen this question come into the questionnaire, and although this is nothing to do with a will, I have covered it in this presentation. A living will is got nothing to do with leaving your properties behind. People, I think, are not aware that when a person leaves a living will, that has got nothing to do with any part of his estate. A living will is basically an advance medical directive that a person is letting his doctors and his relatives know what happens in the case of a terminal illness, and when he is in passive condition, that he is not in a position to realize what is to be done in that situation medically, what are his instructions to his doctors and to the hospitals in respect of such a condition. So a living will is basically setting out the treatment, the medical treatment that a person desires in the event of any terminal illness and in the event of him not being conscious. Suppose he is in a vegetative state and he does not want to continue in that state for long. It will be his desire that the moment he goes into that state, he can, by way of a living will, say that I am not to be put into that state, and I should be immediately, the machines need to be detached from me, and I should be allowed to die peacefully. That is the meaning of a living will. Now, how does a person prepare a living will, and what are the how can he give his instructions in the way that he wants the medical treatment to be followed? So one is that he himself sets it out in a document as to how he wants the medical treatment to be done in the event of his passive condition where he is not awake, and how he wants his doctors to follow his instructions. You know, He can also create something called as a healthcare proxy or a durable power of attorney, where he leaves this decision to be done by another person, who then takes the decision as to what are the medical treatments or decisions. So he in fact appoints a responsible person or a person who he trusts to take that decision in the event of him facing a terminal illness. So this is another way that a person can leave his desire in case of a terminal illness as to how his medical treatment needs to be proceeded with. Now, like I said, there's a whole difference between a living will and a normal will. A living will is not a part of, does not cover his properties. It only considers his medical terminal illness when he is in passive condition. The difference is also that there is no legislation in India for living wills. The concept of living will came about in 2011 by the Supreme Court in the very famous Shanbag case, Aruna Shanbag, who was facing euthanasia, and it was some directions that were given by the Supreme Court setting out how should one, deal in that situation, whether a person should be allowed to die peacefully or whether that person can leave directions behind. Now, that judgment of the Supreme Court of 2011 has then given rise to certain directions that the Supreme Court had done in the famous case of Common Cause. This was a case filed in 2005, but the Supreme Court judgment came out in 2015, and that prescribed certain very, very important criteria how a person creates a will, a living will, what is it that needs to be done, how it needs to be executed. We will just come to that in a moment. So unlike a normal will where a person has to sign and the attesting witnesses have to countersign as witnesses, in the case of an AMD, that's a medical directive, or a living will, he needs to also countersign that before a magistrate. Now, once he signs, the witnesses sign, and it is done before a magistrate. The copy of the living will has to be furnished before the registry, has to be furnished before the court, distributed to all the family members, given to the doctor of the deceased, and also to the local government. So the living will copies have to be given to each of the following in order for it to be a valid living will. Like a normal will, a living will can also be modified or revoked. The revocation or modification, of course, has to be done in the same way that is done for a living will. But in order to revoke a living will, because it is also executed before a magistrate, the revocation will also require to revoke a living will before a magistrate. Nominee, a very, very, very important topic. And, I think I'll spend some time on nomination because as a will is very important, so is a nominee. We as lawyers normally recommend that the first thing that a person needs to do is first nominate. Whenever you create or you have any kind of movable or immovable asset, even before you create a will, you have to please nominate. Now, your asset could be anything. It could be a bank account. It could be a company share. It could be a PPF account. It could be an immovable property. When you have an asset, God forbid if you have died without a will, the third parties, when I say third parties, I mean the banks, I mean the companies, I mean the government, I mean the cooperative society. Each of these people need to know as to who is it that you are trusting with your particular property in the event of your death. Nomination has to be done. It is sometimes required compulsorily, especially when you're having LIC policies, when you're having PPF accounts, Banks normally also require nomination. Societies normally suggest that you create a nominee. The whole point of a nominee is that the person who's nominated acts as a trustee, and these entities then realize that in the event you're no longer alive, who is it that the entities need to deal with in the event of a will not being produced. Now, a nominee normally is only a trustee or a caretaker of the asset. When you nominate somebody, you are not putting in that person who is entitled to your estate or your effect. Sometimes the person who's a nominee is also your beneficiary or the legatee. So a nominee could also be a legatee or a beneficiary, but the word nominee normally gives or suggests that this is a person who's a trustee, who's a caretaker, and who only acts as a representative, as a wire media between the person the property has to go to and the entity, so that the entities know who to deal with till the time the will is proved or till the time the legatee shows up. Now, is it compulsory to appoint a nominee? Of course, it's not compulsory, but it is advisable to nominate a person. Now, why is it advisable to nominate a person? Suppose you don't leave a nominee, and suppose you don't leave a will behind. Now, how does a company know whether who's your legal heir, whether that is the only legal heir, whether by transferring your property to that so-called legal heir, is the entity validly discharging a debt, because the debt is due from these entities to you. Whenever you create a deposit, you are the creditor, the bank is the debtor. When you have a share in a company, you are the shareholder and that is the company. When you have obtained an LIC policy, you are the policy holder, and that is the entity to whom who has to discharge in the event of your demise. So these entities are all normally debtors, and if you don't leave a nomination behind, these entities will require you as a legal heir, even if you are a family member, to first either produce a court document, or you produce an indemnity, an affidavit. They will ask you for a lot of compliances. The easiest way is that if you've nominated, these entities have no option but to transfer it in favor of the nominee. Now, so these third parties can deal with the nominee because you have in your lifetime informed them that this is your nominee. They will not be entitled to raise any questions once the nomination is accepted, and they are legally required to transfer the asset in favor of the nominated person. Now, in certain cases, you can create more than one nomination. In certain cases, only one nominee is entitled. So if you want to create more than one nomination, you will have to see whether the company is allowing it or whether the LIC policies are allowing more than one nominee. Banks normally allow more than one nominee in cases of a joint account. And so far as immovable properties are concerned, even societies allow more than one nominee. Now, in law, a nominee becomes an absolute owner in two situations. Where there's a recent judgment passed by the Supreme Court interpreting Section 72 of the Companies Act, which says that if a company has accepted a nomination of a particular person, shares, that nominee becomes the absolute owner. It's a landmark judgment that was passed just last month by the Supreme Court in the matter of Aruna Shanbhag versus Prashant Shanbhag. The Supreme Court has said that interpreting 72 of the Companies Act of 2013 as the nominee becomes an absolute owner. There was an amendment to the Insurance Act of 1939, where in 2015, where before the position was that a nominee was only a trustee, but the insurance proceeds were given to a nominee. once the nomination was produced. But in 2015, the Insurance Act was amended to vest with the nominee all the proceeds of an insurance policy if the insured has passed away during the currency of the policy. The nominee becomes the whole and sole beneficiary as a nominee or otherwise. So in these two cases, a nominee becomes an absolute owner, and there's nothing more that is required when you're dealing with insurance policies or company securities, and you will, in your right as a beneficiary, be entitled to all the security, company security and insurance policies. In the following cases, an nominee does not become a legal owner and he remains a trustee. One is immovable property. We notice in I keep getting these queries that I'm a nominee. My father has nominated me as a nominee for his flat. He's not left a will behind, so I'm now the owner of the property. No, my friend, the law is different. A nominee for an immovable property does not become the owner. He is only a trustee until the right of the legal heir is produced from a particular court or with consent of all the legal heirs. The society will then only be legally required to transfer it in favor of yourself as a beneficiary. For a provident fund also, public provident fund, a nominee is only a trustee. He can of course take away the money, but that money will remain with the nominee as a trustee for the rightful legal heir to demand the same. It's possible that there could be no other person who make a demand, but if somebody makes a demand, he will have to preserve that provident fund amount for whenever it is required. Mutual funds, bank accounts, government securities, a company will transfer mutual funds, bank accounts, government securities in favor of a nominee, but he, in these cases, is also only a trustee. He has to produce a court document in order to show his legal right as a beneficiary of the deceased. Now, what happens when there's no nomination? When there's no nomination, like I said, the entities will not know who to transfer it to. The property will remain in limbo. You will have to incur the expenses of running to court, getting a document called either a succession certificate or a letter of administration, produce the document. Sometimes this process takes 6 to 8 months, sometimes longer. So this is something that you will avoid if you prepare or nominate somebody, because then the company cannot dispute the nomination and will have to act upon it.